Hi everyone, my name is Akati, my pronouns are she and her, and I'm here to welcome you to Strictly Silk at Home, May edition. Today we're going to be discussing mental health, and I'm super excited to have new friends and old here with me today. I don't know my sides, but this is Muthoni, Muthoni Njogu. She's a sex and relational therapist based in Nairobi. Yes, based in Nairobi. And we're super excited to have you here, and we're looking forward to hear.
Thank you for having me.
Next to her is Neo. Neo is a wearer of many hats. We're super excited to get their insights on spirituality, mental health, and how they intersect. And finally, we have PastorCaroline Omolo from the Cosmopolitan Affirming Church. And they'll be giving us a bit of religious insight as well as letting us know how we can support our communities. So, yeah, I'd like to start by, and you'll be free to ask me as well, if that helps. Hearing what you thought was going to be interesting about this conversation around mental health today, or what your particular interests in a mental health conversation for our community, which is women, non-binary folk, the LGBTQI community, intersex and gender non-conforming persons. So what is the mental health conversation around this community, and what is your particular interest? I'll start with Neo.
Wow.
Yes.
Oh dear. So I think if we speak in community in that sense, sometimes I turn to tense around it, just because there's also a bigger conversation about pathologizing queer people.
For sure.
And mental health is
Yeah.
one of the ways through which queer people are then seen as sick people. But at the same time, I think we have to admit the fact that being queer in our context is hard. So people are not exactly the happiest. So it's a real thing, but I think there's a conversation about just generally mental health,
Yeah.
and seeing queer people, and I'm using queer loosely here. I think seeing them as part of a community that's sick, and kind of trying to fix, no, I mean, I don't mean fixing anybody, but I think it's important to see mental health in the broader sense, and to see why focusing on this community alone is not going to be healing enough, for as long as other people are not healed, even outside the community.
Okay, that's really powerful. I like how you opened by talking about how mental health and mental health care is weaponized against the community, how queerness is pathologized and called an illness, etc. How queer people are asked or forced to undertake mental health care as part of conversion, etc. And how sometimes even the police come in, you know, because under the umbrella of this person is mentally unstable, we are able to bring other punishments in. So I think that's really interesting. And I also like that you've mentioned that our community exists within other communities, and in as much as we would like to focus on the specifics of what's happening to us internally, a lot of the strain is external. You know, there's a lot of things that are put on us, and we need to extend the healing outside, right? Is that what I heard? That's really beautiful. Thank you, Caroline.
So there is the stigma of just being queer, and being queer, it's a lot of things. And people tend to, even if there is something they need to talk about, because they are queer, they tend to hide it. So we need to expose these things that people need to talk about to make people free, because these are things that making people stick or hide behind different things. And if we don't expose these things, and that we are going to just be people who are seen as sick and always mentally challenged.
And I think that ties in very much to what you're saying about the community, and it can lead to the other extreme of underdiagnosis or under acknowledgement of these things, because people don't want to see the full humanity of a queer person, and even of some women. And so you will be struggling under a weight, but because you've been othered, you won't be able to access the care that you need. And like you say, we have been silenced as well. So yeah, thank you. Muthoni?
I think for me, I'm pretty excited about this conversation because we all are collectively living during a very precarious, unsettling time. And I think we have, it's like a veil. There's like a veil that has been removed where we see our own frailty, our own sort of stuff that we've been hiding collectively. And I think this is an opportunity to reset individually and collectively. And so what I was really interested about this conversation is conversations about freedom. What does freedom look like? And what does resilience look like? What does heartache look like? What does grief look like? And what can we unearth from ourselves that can, how do we create meaning, really? You know, I think for me that's really what really is exciting me at this point, because you know how they say that in the midst of chaos is what? Opportunity, growth. Yeah. So what does that look like? I don't know, Neo.
I'm here for the freedom.
Yeah, freedom is
Neo
the
looks
key, yeah?
unimpressed.
Imagining freedom is a thing. And
Imagining
I
freedom
think
is a
that-
thing.
That takes, I mean, it goes to all sorts of places. And
Yeah.
I think there is no point doing anything else if we are not seeking freedom for ourselves and for others.
And it's our time to allow that freedom to be seen, because we tend to speak to ourselves than speaking to other people. We just say, you know, I'm queer, then that's it.
And life is hard.
Yeah.
I'm good. It sucks.
Right. I mean,
I'm queer, I've been disowned.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then yeah.
That's just, it just happened, and that's my life now.
Yeah.
yeah.
Then were you speaking in particular about, you know, this pandemic time? Is that what you meant by now things have been changed?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Because I'm really not trying to use the word shit, but
Yeah, actually.
but
Stuff.
stuff. I think the thing is this is literally what we thought was normal or what we thought was applicable has shifted. So what I was saying about what has changed is literally like our lives have turned upside down. What we thought was normal, what we thought was mundane, what we thought was possible and impossible, everything is now being interrogated from the ways that we relate with each other. I mean, we're not holding hands as much, we're not hugging. I mean, we are definitely, I don't know if we're still having sex, but, you know, the way that, you know, kids are going to school, how people are working. I mean, everything has changed.
Yeah.
And so I think for me, this is also an opportunity to question the value systems that a lot of us have internalized. Does it make sense? You know, what's important in our lives? So I personally think this is, yes, it is painful. Yes, the sense of grief this ambiguous grief that is not ending. The losses that so many of us have experienced, personally, collectively. I mean, that's one thing I think that we're really not addressing. And also the possibilities of what we can create, because in the midst of chaos is opportunity. So I'm excited about that. Yes.
I really like that because I think for the past year, it's over a year now, we've been really kind of processing what has changed and more like the problems it has brought. And again, for our community, like you mentioned, people are working from home, schooling from home. You're taking care of people who are unwell in your family. You're a teacher, you're a nurse. For queer people, they may have been adjustments in their earning or their living situation that then puts them in a position where they have to make different choices about where they live, who they're in community with. You may be outed for someone who wants your job, or you may be forced back into the closet when you move back, home to the family. And we've really been focusing on the practicalities of daily life. How do I get up and do until I sleep? So this idea of now maybe we're at a point where we can see how that works, and now we can look for this thing you're calling the opportunity, to do better, to be better, and to see the things that we've accepted that it might be no longer time to keep on a plate. So I'll ask Caroline, in your experience and in your practice, maybe at the church, have you seen any particular mental health issues coming up within the community that have come up maybe as a result of the pandemic, or that have shifted thereafter, or that how was it before? Was this something people were talking about in the congregation?
I must say I am in a space where about 80% of the congregation is unemployed and depend on casual jobs to survive. So the casual jobs were available before the pandemic,
Yeah.
very much available.
Yeah.
But since March 2020, all these things have been secretly destroyed, and nobody is able to find a proper casual job to do. And it's a conversation that before it wasn't that necessary to talk about. But as we go by, the 1.5 years that has passed, it has forced us to shift even our preachings from the normal preaching to now speaking of issues, particular issues that are raising eyebrows on mental health,
Yeah.
anxiety, depression, because people come to you that I moved back to my family and now I have to live with their rules, and the rules are really tough.
Yeah.
So when you find the rules are tough, now you find ways of now adapting to situations that you are not familiar with. And it brings a lot of imbalance in yourself. So we have shifted on now. We are talking about, we explaining things to people that this is the reality now. We cannot live better than we used to. We need to do things differently. And I have found also a security contact person in the community. Most of the issues that I have reported right now are suicide, depression, anxiety, and a lot of people are seeking therapy. Something that was never there before, because in a month we could only report maybe 2 people or 1 person seeking therapy. But now, since March, we are getting about maybe 13 people a month, maybe 16 people a month. And these are not people who are probably not, that they don't have jobs to do. They have jobs, but what is happening right now, it is making you, the new normal that has been created, it makes you want to do things differently, but you cannot. So it's an issue that we need to not just say that it's the coronavirus that has brought, but it seems it's something that was there before, but now the pandemic has brought it to light that people now have to speak about things. As a religious or faith leader, as we speak, the Bible is restricted to certain things. But if you just follow the restrictions, then you are leaving so many people behind. So it has forced us to look for things in the Bible that bring people together, stories that bring people together, scriptures that do not condemn people, scriptures that make people want to be in a particular space, because that is what is working, because normal preaching does not work well to people right now, because when you tell people praise the Lord loves you, but I slept hungry,
Yeah.
how are you helping me?
Yeah.
The Lord loves you, but I am having some things, very, very many things I'm going through, but nobody can make me speak about them. So what I say at the pulpit will make someone say, okay, this is what is happening.
Yep.
And now I will pick it from there. I will say, do you want a spiritual guidance? Do you want a therapist, professional? Do you want to enroll to maybe a gym to do exercise?
Yeah.
Do you want go to yoga for meditation? So it's something that we need to like do it the other way, not the way we used to do it.
But you still tell them that God loves them, right?
Yeah, the way they are, the way they are, yes.
Yeah. I think that ties really well with something Neo said at the beginning about mental health not existing in a vacuum, and it depends on other people, and it also depends, as we are learning, on your other circumstances in life. So I'm curious, Neo, is there anything that you would say, sort of practical or day to day, needs to be in place for you to be able to focus on whether mental health is a thing you need to be dealing with right now, to be able to take this opportunity and say, okay, I can now work on my mental health?
I think one of the things, first, I wanted to, before I forget, say something to an idea that you've both spoken to, which is this idea of, there's now a disruption
Yep.
by the pandemic, and there was what we knew as normal, but also just wondering whether that life was great, because I don't want to go back to that personally. I just think that life was bad, right? Even before the pandemic. And we were not exactly being kind to each other. We were not caring enough, and wondering whether maybe from now on, if the pandemic ever ends, whether we're going to change the way that we treat each other and how we treat the environment and how we treat, how do we live fully in the world, not just as queer people, but what is going to change in our relationship with life in its fullness. But anyway, speaking to what about practical things, I think personally, actually, let me come out on this. I've lived with mental health challenges for a long time, so I'm a bit loose. Things sometimes do go all right, but I think one of the things is that people sometimes tend to speak about mental health in such a broad way that we miss what's going on. So I think there's a difference between quite casually having a chemical imbalance and just needing a break from the pressures of life. So you are broke. It's not the same thing as having lobe epilepsy. I think those things, and not to really say that science first, but I think a lot of people don't get diagnosed, right? either because you don't know or because you're depressed, but in a season because something happened, because you're grieving. I think that's a part of mental health wellness, but you are not sick in the sense of being, your brain being sick as a part of your body. Right. And I find myself wanting to make this difference because if we don't, then the approaches do not reach where they're supposed to. Because if I'm broke, all I need is money and I'll be fine. So give me money so that I'm fine. It doesn't mean that I'm sick.
Yeah.
It just means that my circumstances have changed or my circumstances have gotten worse and now I don't feel good because my landlord is calling me every minute, right? So I think talking about mental health is also really important to think about whether there are circumstances in people's lives that we need to put work into. And perhaps maybe there are not as many sick people as you think there are.
Because that could tie into what we mentioned about sometimes people in our community already kind of just have this baseline of, because of my identities, life sucks. You know, life is going to suck. So there's nothing much to be done about it. But if we enact community and systemic change, then this baseline level of suck wouldn't exist. And then we could be able to say, okay, so that was because I did in fact need a break. But this is because maybe something I need to go and see a professional. I'd love to hear what Muthoni thinks about that binary between, I don't know what the term would be, a mental health challenge or a situational mental health episode, and something that is more physiological, biological, kind of, yeah.
So first of all, I think the first premise is, as mental health care practitioners, is we understand there's not a one size fit all, right? So when you come and see a therapist, we're not gonna go and say, okay, what I did with client X is what I'll do with client Y. And I'm glad that you're bringing up the experience of context. We very rarely understand that we are in different contexts, that our economic, political, social, cultural experiences have a bearing on the way that we experience the world. The third thing is, I really like what you said about being able to recognize, is this situational? Like you're just in a horrible situation and you're being more reactive, right? As opposed to, is it episodic? You know, like now the weather is not that great. And and there are folks who struggle. So is it during this cold season, you know, you're going to need a little bit extra support? Or is it something that is part of your experience as a human being when you talk about, you know, issues with the brain, for instance, issues with the hormones, for instance, you know. So it's important when you are choosing a healthcare practitioner to walk with you, to have those conversations in terms of what their competency levels are, what, like, you know, what type of like professional accreditation are you involved in, so that you know that this person will be able to engage from a plethora of lenses.
So for the non-professional at home and trying to figure out where exactly is this challenge, as you put it, is it situational, is it episodic? What are the things that we can look out for in ourselves and in the people around us, maybe in the household or at work, etc., and be like, this is something that maybe take the day off and go do your nails. But this is something maybe you can talk to me about and we can sort it out together. And this is something that I can support you to go and figure out who is a good person professionally to talk to before we hit a crisis, you know, because I think a lot of mental, and you know, you can let us know your experience, a lot of people seek mental health care at a point of crisis. And maybe if we could be able to intervene earlier, it would be better for.
I think the thing is this is it really starts with the acceptance that we can have periods of fragility. You know, we just accepting. I think for so many of us, because of the ways that we have been othered, then we take in this persona of like in women, you know, I'm a strong black woman. Or if you're Kikuyu, we do not feel anything. You know,
Those are not our problems.
you know, African, you know, we don't, you don't remember Azungu. Right? I mean, it's just recognizing that we hurt. I think understanding that there'll be periods when you do need support. Now, whether that's support that you will harness internally, like we talk about self-care, you know, like go get your nails done, or you take a day off, or you say today I'm just gonna stick in my room and watch Real Housewives of Atlanta. I really like that show. But, you know,
Trash TV.
you know, I mean, if that's how you feel at that moment, then allow yourself, give yourself permission. I think that's what it is.
To have a bad day.
Yeah, to have a bad day. And I think giving ourselves permission will then give us a sense of recognizing patterns. Because patterns, then you'll be able to know, wait, when it's June, July, August, I usually feel like this. Then you'll be able to seek support along those lines. Or when you have a sense of awareness, you realize, wait a minute, my grandmother, my auntie, my mother, my sister have expressed similar needs, or their behavior is similar to how I'm feeling or how I'm acting. So I think everything starts with giving yourself the permission. Then for permission, then you'll be able to lean towards what might be what you need. Yeah, we don't give ourselves permission. You know, as black folk, as queer folk, as women, as folks who are black and brown, we don't give ourselves permission because we're so entrenched in the performance of surviving. Like, we have to survive this shit. Oops, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so the shit.
Yeah.
It's okay.
You know, we have to survive this. So you have no time to say, wait a minute, what is this about? We don't have time for that. You know, you're trying to, I don't know, overrun the system, right? We are busy trying to prove that we can handle things. And really, we are not built as solitary beings. We're not. We are built to seek some type of cooperation, some type of community. I mean, why do we have oxytocin and dopamine? Like, why? Because we are created to seek support, to seek communion. But because we've been told we are less than, or we do not deserve it, you know, then we just think we're crap. We move in the world like that. Yeah.
Muthoni, you said something really interesting about the first step is giving ourselves permission, and because of the challenges that we face as, you know, who we are in the community, we don't have that skill. A lot of us don't have that skill. We don't put ourselves first. We don't listen to ourselves internally because we are battling with so much outside, and we are also masking so much, you know, to get through the day. So how, and this is not just for Muthoni, for all of us, what have you seen that is a useful way to be able to tap into that space of grace and give yourself permission, even if it's only to listen to yourself, so that you can then take the next steps to figuring out, I'm struggling with X, or Y makes me really happy and I should do more of that. So how do we give ourselves that permission and that grace given everything else that we're dealing with on a daily basis? I can start with Caroline.
Okay. So it's not that we don't listen to our inner self. We do. We only avoid the outcome of what it might cause to us. We listen so much to an extent when I now decide now I want to now dip myself in alcohol. I have listened to myself, and I know it's only alcohol that can cure this. But after drinking, you go back to where you are. So giving yourself permission, just accept that I have a problem and I need to talk it out or share it with someone. If you don't have someone in the space where you are,
Yeah.
you have friends. You have someone like Muthoni Njogu. You can call and say, okay, I am feeling this way today, but I don't want to talk about it with someone else. Can you help? Can we discuss why this is happening to me? So that before you get into a more dangerous space, Muthoni Njogu would have talked to you about something that this is the limit you can go, but after this, what can you do? So also, the idea of giving yourself permission is allowing yourself to do things differently. If you are used to jogging to town every day, why don't you jog to some other place and seek for new environment and see how that feels? Prayer also works, but prayer does not mean you just have to close your eyes and shout. Meditate. Meditation is a prayer, and it works. Just listen to yourself in your own space. Make it your own space and say, me today I want to just go to behind that house, under that tree, and I just want to focus on myself and feel what is happening to myself and release all this stress that I am feeling. So yes, those are some of the ways you can give yourself permission. Or if you are feeling that I need to shout, why are you restricting the shout? Just shout, because it will relieve some pain in you.
Can you imagine shouting? You're somewhere in Madara and you shout and
Yeah.
everybody gets out of their house and runs out
Yeah.
because they think it's a fire.
Yeah. There are places you can't shout.
Places you can't shout.
Context.
It
As
is
with
alarming
everything.
for some people.
Context.
Imagine shouting at police station.
Exactly. I mean,
Yeah,
Okay,
but there are places,
yeah.
there are instances that you feel, I need to get rid of this. So shouting or maybe crying out loud that, guys, I need help, then someone will come to your aid. There's some person who did that, and he was helped, and he is fine now.
So I'm hearing that not only should we, there's always that thing between listening and hearing. So,
Yes.
you know, there's this conversation you have with yourself, but
Yes.
then where we tend to stop is, I've heard it, but I can't deal with it.
Yeah.
I don't want to do the things that I know would make me feel better
Yes,
for whatever reason. So to give ourselves the opportunity to just allow that to happen and see if that's if it makes a difference, and also to change your circumstance what you can. So if you can't move, but maybe you can take a walk in the morning and have a bit of private time.
And a lot of people tend to want to be like other people.
Uh-huh.
I want to be like Neo, but I don't know what Neo is going through.
True.
So it's only me to allow myself be me and accept that I am me and be at that spot and start working on what makes me happy and avoid what makes me not feel myself at all.
Thank you so much. Neil,
um,
should I bring the question back?
I'm the joker. But one of the things is that personally, a very anti-happiness person, and that means that I don't strive to be happy because it's too much work.
Wow.
I'm like, you know what? I want to be comfortable, but happiness is not a goal that I have.
Okay.
Because it's a lot of pressure. I'll have to do so much and I'm lazy. So I do the bare minimum. And
To be comfortable.
to be comfortable. And I, I don't know where I'm going with this, but one of the things is that it's fine to reach out to people, but for some of us, what works is cut off people. Right? So if I'm not well, of course, if Muthoni calls me, I'll answer because that might help me, and I might not pay consultation fee.
Neil, you mentioned something really interesting about how for you happiness is not the goal, you're seeking comfort, and I'd like to explore that thought and kind of see how you are differentiating happiness versus comfort, why you made that decision, and then I'd love to hear from the other two what they think about that as a process.
So of course, I do definitely feel like there's a happiness industry that is working really hard in a super capitalist way. So it's almost like happiness is this thing that you keep buying, right? And very quickly it becomes about objects of desire, and the goals keep shifting, so you will never achieve it, right? If I think this will make me happy, the next thing is that I need something else beyond that to kind of maintain a level of happiness.
So we've also kind of externalized markers
Exactly.
of happiness.
It's not an internal thing. Happiness is not
So
an
I'm happy
internal
when
thing.
I can point at this thing I
Exactly.
own, this person I'm
Exactly.
with, but it's not about what's happening.
It's not about what's really happening inside you, but also, I mean, I think the concept of content is really important to me as a person, because seeking content allows me to understand that things might not always look glamorous. But thinking of like, am I content with this, right? Do I have food? Am I sleeping hungry because I'm too depressed to cook, or am I sleeping hungry because I don't have food? Those are two different things, right? And I think it's just like, really, for me personally, I think spiritually it's very important for us to think of what basic life could look like, and finding pleasure in the basicness of life. And also, I mean, and this is not even a thing that I want to project on other people, but I think more and more as I grow older, I realize that I'm not interested in material accumulation, and that gives me something, a sort of fulfillment, to not desire materially beyond what I'm comfortable with. So I don't need to accumulate anything. I don't need to own things, because for some people that would be their happiness, to own things. I just don't want to suffer, because suffering is suffering is suffering, and it's not nice. So I don't want to suffer, but also at the same time, I don't want to be somebody who carries so much baggage about things, and tying up my mental wellness, really. I don't want to tie it to things,
Yeah.
because that's very unpredictable and very fragile. So yeah, basically, how do I sustain life fully and in a healthy way, without desiring things that keep moving? The goals keep getting shifted, and that would be frustrating.
Okay.
So that's my thing with happiness.
And before I pass the question to the other two, I wanted to also ask, because you mentioned that sometimes with relationships it's more about keeping people away than bringing more people in. So I was wondering about that. Is that how you decide who to keep in, when they need to be let in or out, whether it's a forever closed, or if it's an open, a door that kind of swings. Yeah.
So I think I'm gonna come off really badly on this one, but I'm really anti-people.
Okay.
Because
As a
a lot of our
foundation.
problems are people problems, right? Because I would just walk by a construction site and someone will piss me off. So because I live such a kind of a lone life, I think the reason I realize this works is that I interact with people on my own terms. I choose when to see people, and I choose what people to see. And that's really a privilege for me. That's like really a big privilege because not everyone can do that. Um, so I open my doors to people that I want at that particular moment in my life, and I can shut that. When I need to be alone, I'm totally, totally on my own. But not to say that people are bad. I'm a big believer in community, but also I want to choose the people that I'm in community with and seriously take that seriously, that I am in community with Muthoni, because I know what the clarity of our politics, and it's not just identity-based community. That is not a thing that I want for myself, because also sometimes you're in community with people, or the idea of community is also people that are really bad for you, or people that you don't imagine freedom in the same way with. So I want to create my community. So I'm in community with particular people because I know them, and we have a relationship of mutual care, right? And understanding and generosity. And that is not negotiable, and we understand it, and that's the reason we're in community together, because we care about each other. And I think that's the baseline for me. Otherwise, I have no business being with everybody because they are black. I'm like, some
Yes.
black people are nasty. I don't want them. So yeah, I don't know whether that answers anything.
What I'm hearing is that there's a lot of intention in the way you move through your days, who you decide to let near yourself, all that. And I think it's also how you've built your philosophy of contentment with a lot of intention, that this matters to me, this does not. This builds me, this does not. But I'd love to hear from Muthoni and Caroline about this concept of happiness. Is it something we should be seeking? Is it something we need to redefine? Is it, is Neo completely wrong?
I am wrong. I know I'm wrong.
do we need to
don't
bring
think
them into
so.
the light?
I don't think you are.
And then, so two questions. One, happiness, and two, loneliness versus aloneness, especially in our community where we know people are rejected, they're misplaced, they're pushed away, and loneliness could easily happen. How do we make sure that we don't veer into the opposite of just having people around to have people around? I'll start with you, Muthoni.
So I think it really resonates with me.
With not liking people.
I'm like, ew, people. But so the first thing because what is a predominant theme during sessions is the pursuit. Oh, it's gonna sound like a line from a movie, but the pursuit of happiness. I was like, oh no, it's like the movie. But it's a
Cut in
pursuit,
some Will Smith.
right? I'm just like, and how to sort of invite ourselves to look at contentment, because contentment feels, even when you say the word contentment, for me, it conjures up steadiness, it conjures up expansiveness. It is beyond what we have been told, like Neo, mentioned, that you're not acquiring stuff to be happy, but stuff is also good because it gives you some freedom and comfort, right? So I really love the idea that what would contentment look like? How do you know you're contented? Is with your five senses, how do you taste contentment? How do you touch contentment? How do you see contentment? How do you hear contentment? And that varies from different people. But I love that. The other thing about what Neo was talking about people, I kind of smiled because we we are this thing about people. It is really hard being an introvert. It is incredibly hard being an introvert in a lot of our communities because a lot of our sense of worth and our sense of identity is derived from consistent community activities. So I can only imagine, Neil, the kind of backlash you received. You know, we say, yeah, I just wanna be by myself. Why? And then I think what also Neil talks about, which is very important to sort of be aware of, is are we coming in communion because we are trauma bonded?
Uh-huh.
You know, is it because of our mutual experience of pain? Because pain can be very, alluring. And
Romantic even.
yes,
Yeah.
oh yes. So it's important to think about our intention, be self-aware of what the impetus is. Yeah, and why we're doing some of these things.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's really, really lovely. Caroline?
Wow. They have said so much good things about happiness and contentment. For me, as much as happiness might be short-lived sometimes, and in most instances, it's always short-lived, and now you would want more. Especially, let me be a bit obscene kidogo.
Okay.
Especially in our community, people are really aggressive about sex. So when you are looking for sex, you go have it, and then that is the end of it. Then you don't want to see this person. You are happy when you're having sex. After that, the happiness is gone. You want to experience more happiness with more sexual partner. You want to do more with, I did this style, now I want this other style.
Hey, your people are living well.
You see, because happiness, it grows. Happiness grows. You can't just be happy with 10 shillings today and tomorrow the same 10 shillings. If you have 10 shillings today, tomorrow you'll need maybe 50 because demands has grown. What made you happy yesterday will not make you happy today. But contentment is something that is within you. Like I feel this is enough for me. Whatever anybody thinks I should have does not matter. Yes. So
Okay.
it is what you feel, this is enough. It's enough for me. Even if my family said it should be more than whatever they feel it's, then it doesn't matter. Nothing matters when you are contented with whatever is in the present or the thing that will come tomorrow. That's it. Nobody can change that.
Yeah. So another thing I'm hearing, and it's taking me back to giving ourselves permission, is that we also need to define for ourselves these things. So we define for ourselves, contentment will look like this and work towards that, rather than kind of looking around and seeing, oh, these people on Instagram look really happy on a beach. So clearly happiness is found on the beach. I need to go to the beach. The question is, while we are now, going home and thinking about these things, and we're like, I'm going to take some time, give myself permission, really listen to what I am telling myself. I'm going to set my own definitions. We kind of have an idea of the red flags, of these are things that we need to intervene, or this is a dangerous situation brewing. But what are the opposite? What are the things we should be working towards? What are the things that if we see happening, we should be like, I'm on a good path. I'm enjoying the journey. So I was asking, for example, I'm not a morning person, but let's say I go home, I start doing this work. In 3 weeks, am I going to wake up at 6 a.m. joyfully? Or what other kind of things can I look for? Is it like eating better? Do I feel something glowing? What are the kinds of things that at least people can hold on to and say, this is working, I can keep going? Or this person was in a harder place and I can see them kind of emerging from that. Caroline.
So Nairobi is known to be a walking city, like people always on toes. And people tend to look for several things. And people want to have enough to hold on to things. And we don't always have rest. We don't rest. We want today, we still want tomorrow. There's no rest. So probably if I don't sleep for 1 week, then the next week I catch that enough sleep for maybe 24 or 48 hours. I think that's an improvement because you are building something new, something that you didn't have last week. So in these 24 or 48 hours that you have slept well, and then you slept well, sorry, and you'll feel like there is a new you that is being brought. Because the last week you've spent looking for money, looking for things to do, just making yourself comfortable and wanting to be happy all the time. So at some point your body feels you're tired. You need that enough rest. And I'm so jealous of Neo when Neo said that anaka nyumaya.
Location not to
And
be
also
visible.
Yeah, Nyumaya, the place where Anaiza view things and be friends to other creatures who are not human beings. So those are kind of things that the practices that we need to develop once in a while to ensure that at least I am not just seated next to my partner every other time. I need to change location. Nimwambie today, can we spend time in the sitting room, not in the bedroom?
No, you stay in the bedroom, I go to the sitting room. Can we not spend time together?
Yes. Can we not always go to town all the time together? Can we do separate walks? Can we do things like differently so that I collect things that can build our relationship? You also collect things that can make our relationship work, because whenever we do things all the time, every day at the same time, then we are doing the same thing. Nobody is going to help any other person, because that's a trend that is common. I want to work with my partner so that people see that I have a partner. And are we building it? Are we making it stronger by bringing in new things? We are not bringing in new things. We are just putting in things that we started with last year. We still continuing. So we need to do things differently. And also Neo said I read somewhere that a cup of coffee in the morning is good for you.
Okay.
Yes, it's really good for you. And also, I think the Bible also encourages people to take a glass of wine or two for your body. It helps. People might think it's going to maybe make you look like someone who likes alcohol too much, but there is time for everything. You need to create time for everything. I need to today start reading a book about maybe a storybook about things to encourage my life. Not only the Bible that encourages. The Bible sometimes really throws you away, because it only talks about man this, man that, man this, no woman this. And even if there is woman this, people don't talk about it. People tend to crop that part and speak about the man, because it is believed that man brought everything and man will destroy everything. Women can do also. Women can also. We need only to be to create that chance, we need to fill the gap so that we also talk about the good things.
I also like what you said about I've extrapolated. You said alcohol. I had pleasure. So about taking pleasure in the things that are available to you. So not casting the things that make you feel good as bad or wrong or evil because a book or a person told you about them in a certain time of your life. And the third thing I like you mentioned about communing with creatures that are not human, and that again the universe has given us opportunities to find love and support even with pets, with animals, with just a bird that flies next to your window and gives you a smile that day. I think that's really lovely. Neil, the question,
In
if I
this
could take it back.
conversation, I realized that I'm actually not a good person.
Why?
Because when you were talking about your partner, I'm just like, I am against this thing of
Partner
living with
in your house.
together.
Kwangu.
Why are you in my space? I don't want to be in your space.
You're like
We can
Whoopi
meet once in
Goldberg.
a while and shag if we must.
But this is what we're saying. You've defined that for yourself.
Yes.
And you'll find someone for whom that definition works.
Right?
Yeah. And
I
then
live with my
anyone who
partner.
comes with opinions.
It's very nice.
Yeah. Anyone with opinions, you tell them that's yours
It's
to
actually
carry.
really nice. I don't think I could ever live with anybody.
Wow.
I know. Because also, I'm seriously, I'm only talking about the things I'm against. I think at some point, I feel personally invested in destroying the thing we call the family unit. Like, part of it needs to go. Like,
Just quietly applauding from the corner.
I love my family a lot, and I know they love me, and they say I'm blessed in that way, and I know you love your family a lot, and your mom is awesome. But, man, part of the queer problem is this thing of a family and how sacred it's held. People are suffering because of this thing about my family. And I'm just like, maybe if we didn't have this, people would be happier. But now I digress. What was your question?
Wow.
Actually, I realized you had answered the question, or the question had originated from you. No, wait, that was the other question. Sorry, editor. The question was, what are positive signs, things we can look out for to celebrate as we're trying to improve our mental health, or as we're supporting someone improving their mental health? What are things we can say, okay, this is something we were not able to do a couple of X ago, and now we are able to do it, or however else you would frame it.
Well, I think that, as Muthoni was saying, the kind of different challenges that people have, I think some things work for some people, others don't. If you're a basic bitch like me, the things that work are basic things. So basically, and I mean, I might say it jokingly, but I realize that there's something that upsets me about concrete when it's too much. It feels frustrating. It's almost like I'm not stepping on the ground. I'm constantly stepping on this thing, right? And I'm moving out of the city. It's like, this is what I need because I have a relationship with my body and I have a relationship with earth. I want to walk barefoot and step on, on the substance that's earth. And that works for me. It might not work for somebody else. There are people who want to be surrounded by people all the time. But also a part of that is that because of this being surrounded by people, you don't get a chance to listen to yourself. Listen to your body responding to your environment. Because as we were saying, trauma bonding is a thing. I want to be with people smoking joints and drinking. It's not like that's a bad thing, but because that feels good because I don't have to deal with myself. And yeah, I think different things work for people. And for me, I think silence is really important. Like just a basic silence, like being still, as they say. Just be still, and things will speak to you, and then you know how you feel and how that makes you feel. Because half the time, also there are people where sometimes you really want somebody, you want physical contact, you want other things that you might not give yourself, right? So it's about knowing what works when, and then creating, as I was saying, creating rituals around what feels great, what feels comfortable, what feels encouraging. And so yeah, feeding birds is a thing, you know, and planting things is a thing for some of us, and it's important.
I really like that. I love one that you've mentioned, that how you feel in your body is also part of it. So checking in, making sure you're also in contact with your physical self. And then creating room for silence and stillness, because we always go, 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 go. And just being able to sit even in the discomfort the first few times of there's nothing happening, there's no one talking. But then as you see yourself getting more comfortable, you can see a bit of some progress.
So I think we're talking about green flags,
Yes.
right? And I am a big believer in pleasure. I think that's like my favorite thing to talk about and to engage in. I think it's just understanding the pleasure isn't confined within the space of body fluids and sex. It's about how we sort of live in the moment by using of our senses, experiencing the world through our five senses, through touch, through smell, through sight. Another thing which I think we sort of have all brought up is the idea of living in the present, just here and now, engaging with what is in front of us, not in the past and not about the future. It's what's happening right now. There is the experience of movement. I think there is a lot of, I think, courage when we give ourselves permission to move from our present space, whether that is intellectually or conversationally or even physically going somewhere new. Because that's really trusting. You're trusting that you'll meet people who will be kind, people who will be generous, people who will be excited about you as you are, about them. So I love that, what you talked about, movement. Another thing I think we don't really like to talk about is interdependence. When you talked about, like, in a partnership, like, you know, let's separate and then we'll come back later on and share about what we have learned. I think we are afraid of interdependence because many of us have been raised in environments where we haven't felt that we are enough. And so when we meet someone, we want to sort of like cling into the person like forever and ever and ever, and not understanding there's so much joy in being interdependent. Have I covered all the green flags that we were talking about?
Maybe have more.
More?
I'm loving listening to you. So.
I can add a question in as far as your work as a relational therapist, and just as a final thought to wrap us up, how would you say intimacy? Talk about intimacy and its relationship to mental health, and what we can look for and what we should be seeking.
Oh, wow. That is such a great
Again,
question.
not just sexual intimacy.
That's the
but
first place I went.
Fantastic.
That's the first place I went because
yeah.
I was like, because really having great sex if that is what you're inclined to, right?
Yeah.
Because there are folks who aren't. It's really about vulnerability. It's really about being in a space where you feel safe. It's really about the ability to engage with your partner or partners, right, from a place of self-awareness. So it has all those really juicy parts in terms of the green flags you're talking about. But now it's within sex. So that always gets me excited. Um, um, I'm like, but you talked about intimacy, but also understanding that intimacy is also outside the sexual space, right? It is the ability to see oneself in the eyes of somebody else. It's really about how do we show up being vulnerable. I know vulnerability is like a big thing right next to self-care. Like, that's the buzzwords. But really, it's about how do we cultivate empathy and compassion for not necessarily those that we have a lot of things in common with, but those that we don't have. That's where is the Achilles heel, right? Yeah, like how do I have in common with someone who doesn't is not a member of my faith, for example, or who my gender or my socioeconomic class? How do we create that levels of intimacy? It's really seeing ourselves in somebody else. And I think that's where the work is, and that's where the joy is. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I think that's a brilliant note to end on, that
I
we
know.
will go forth and see ourselves, listen to ourselves, and also try and see ourselves in others.
Yes.
Thank you guys so much. This has been a brilliant conversation. I am so grateful you honored our invitation. I'm so grateful you shared of yourselves with everyone here and out there. And thank you.
Thank you for inviting us.
Yay.
All right.